TurboViews has been going on for over 8 years, and now it's time for a little R&R. Hey everybody, this is Chris Bucci, and welcome to the second installment of Random Rerun. And today we're looking at JJ and Jeff, a really cool little action platformer that I am revisiting again for the second or third time here on the channel, because it's a game that's really special to me and that I really, really like. And it's also the 5th TurboViews episode that I ever did. This was created a long time ago, but when I chose the first 5 games that I wanted to do, this was before I ever decided I wanted to continue the series and do everything. I wanted to pick some games I didn't know and some games I did know, and JJ and Jeff was one I did know, and I always wanted to talk about it with people on the internet, especially since at that time TurboGrafx coverage was very, very minimal, if at all. I mentioned in my first DVD set in the commentary track for this game that JJ and Jeff was one of the reasons why the TurboGrafx became a favorite of mine, and that is the truth. Keith Courage and Alpha Zones, I mean, for most people it's their most nostalgic game, and it is kind of for me, but you know I'm not the biggest fan of the game as some people. And JJ and Jeff, however, is the one that really grabbed my attention for the TurboGrafx. And I was always wrestling with the 3.5 star rating. I didn't really know what my rating scale meant at the time, and so I was kind of bouncing between 3.5 and 4, 3.5 and 4. I mean, ultimately, that half star isn't a big deal, and a 3.5 is recommended, you know, and above average, but I was always bouncing around. JJ and Jeff was the 7th TurboGrafx game that I ever picked up. I used to keep track of the games in the order that I picked them up, and I used to actually print them in a newsletter. It was really, really funny. And if I look at my newsletter, I got a few games at one time when I was out of town. I remember there was a little bulk purchase that I made, and it was in August of 1991. We were visiting my aunt in Ohio, and at that mall was a Babbage's. Now, Babbage's was not in my hometown. And so whenever I would go to like Ohio to visit people or to visit my aunt, and I could find a Babbage's or an electronics boutique, I was always excited, and there was one there. And they were having a TurboGrafx 16 sale. Now, I can't remember what it was exactly, but I think it was buy 2, get 1 free. Because if you look at my list, I've got 3 games purchased on the same day, one of which was Sinistron, which is a game we just covered on TurboViews, and one was Bonk's Revenge, which was a favorite game of mine that just had come out, and we covered that as well. So I got JJ and Jeff with those other 2 games in like a purchase of 3. We stayed in a hotel, and if you remember those hotels, and they still have them, they had television sets, but they were kind of tough to get to because you had to get to the RF connector in the back. And somehow I was able to get to the RF connector on the back of the TV and plug in my TurboGrafx 16. And I remember starting up these games and playing all night long in the hotel. It was really cool. Bonk's Revenge, obviously, I played like crazy. I got my you-know-what whooped in Sinistron and gave up pretty quick. JJ and Jeff, however, I could not get enough of. And at the time, the bigger characters with their oversized heads, you know, and the music, I always love the music in this game. And all the hidden surprises, you know, a la, you know, a Super Mario Brothers or something. And every once in a while, I still love picking that game up. In fact, and don't tell anyone this, it's between you and I actually started a JJ and Jeff comic. I used to draw comics when I was a kid, and I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed the whole concept of creating a comic book. I would take my crayons and I would just color it in, and I still happen to have issue 1 of JJ and Jeff, the 2 bumbling detectives, and yeah, we're not going to talk about that, so again, keep that a secret. Anyway, I know the game didn't get very great reviews, and it still doesn't, and that's okay. It was always a game that I enjoyed. Now, for those who don't know, this is actually a restructured version of a PC Engine game called Kato-chan and Ken-chan. These two characters originally were from a popular Japanese television variety show around the mid-80s, so obviously when it came to America, two generic characters were introduced. Also, the game changed a little bit, and some of the toilet humor was dumbed down, and I know a lot of people don't like the American version because of this, but honestly, I guess I don't really favor one over the other. I don't really find the humor in the original all that funny after the first couple of times anyway. Again, that's just me. Obviously, my memories are tied to the American version before I even knew, there was an original, so that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, I like both of them. One of the other criticisms about JJ and Jeff is that the controls are slippery, and I would agree with that with Jeff. Because he slides around, he runs too fast, his jumping isn't as precise. The game almost seems like it was made for JJ. That's the way the levels seem designed. The game is still kind of fun with Jeff, but with JJ I have a lot more fun. There's this one part that's extremely hard. A lot of people get stuck on this part here, and there we go. Now, if you're playing with Jeff, it's a lot harder. I've done it once before a long time ago, but it's not as much fun. And I think that's one of the reasons why I gave it slightly less of a star than I would have normally, because I don't feel both players are nicely balanced. So let's get to the review itself. As for the review, it is part of what I call the infamous first 5 reviews. Basically, I lost the first 5 reviews almost entirely, except for some of the low resolution picture and audio. So in order to create the version that is on the DVD, and of course the one you're about to watch, I had to rebuild the episode frame by frame and put all the B-roll back in and get it nice and massaged in there because I had lost it all. It was a weird bug in my software. And again, just like the first random rerun, my nose sounds all plugged up. And it's like, hey everybody, welcome to the review. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's about it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective sort of look back on JJ and Jeff, a game I really enjoy. And let's watch the review. JJ and Jeff is the American version of a game loosely based on a Japanese game show called Fun TV with Kato-chan and Ken-chan. The characters were replaced with 2 bumbling detectives, one named JJ and one named Jeff. The original game had a little more toilet humor, and many criticized this one for being too censored. But, and I know I'm in the minority here, I find it to be a rather addicting, fun little platformer. There isn't much in terms of a storyline, really. The JJ and Jeff Detective Agency gets a call. An extremely rich man has been kidnapped and it's their job to solve the case. One character that you choose takes it on himself. The other gets ticked off for being left behind and goes along for the ride anyway, but only in the background. The character you choose runs from place to place, taking out enemies and going through several levels with a boss at the end of each. Even though the manual and the box say there are 8 total levels, there are actually 6 fields with 4 sections in each, so you could say there are either 6 levels or 24. There are a few ways to attack in JJ and Jeff, including jumping on enemies' heads a la Super Mario Bros., spraying enemies with a spray can, and giving them a nice swift kick. Some methods work better with some enemies than with others. For example, the spray can is the only way you can defeat the long-necked dinosaurs, and is good for knocking out groundhogs who are just too damn small to kick. Since it's a typical platformer, you have your typical life bar. It goes down a notch every time you get hit, but also depletes as the game goes on, forcing you to snag as much food and fruit along the way as possible to replenish it. And trust me, you don't want the life meter to get too low or you'll hear this. Yikes! The best part of this game are the hidden coins, doorways, and food items scattered all around the stages. There are literally a million things to find. Collecting coins is necessary for points, which leads to extra lives, and for the slot machine, which can be found in certain bathrooms. Yep, you heard me right. Bathrooms. 1-ups can also be found, and hitting the secret pole awards various items based on how hard you kick it. The key is your pass to the final boss in each field, and without it, you have to backtrack in order to continue. Therefore, finding the key is necessary, and you need to search for it in the third section of each field, even if you decide not to find any other hidden items in the rest of the game. There are also hidden warps, elevators and special goodie stages, and evil green springs. Why do I call them evil? Because their sole purpose is to transport you to other areas, coming in very handy if you didn't find the key. But sometimes you'll accidentally fall onto a spring, sending you God only knows where. Ugh. And speaking of ugh, don't listen to the arrows. Yeah, sometimes you'll fall and get a free hidden slot machine, sure, but most of the time you'll be sent back to places in the game you don't want to be. The other detective appears in the background as he follows you throughout your quest. Sometimes he does nothing, other times he tries to hinder your progress, and often he'll help you by appearing in secret rooms, giving you hints or invincibility. When he becomes troublesome, just give him a good kick. JJ and Jeff has average graphics for a first-year release on the TurboGrafx 16. The characters are large, which is nice, the colors pop, and there is a little variety. But it can get rather dull and repetitive. Enemies will repeat themselves quite often. The game is pretty much a mixed match of weird characters and probably made more sense in the Japanese version. A dino that barks? A bird that poops brown? My. The bosses are large, but all of them are basically recolors of the same character model. The sounds are also average, but I absolutely love the music. I find it extremely hummable. The controls are pretty accurate and responsive. I personally like using JJ, because Jeff slides too darn much, runs too darn fast, and seems to jump around quicker, making it harder to time jumps. I find JJ to have a better rounded control scheme, and he definitely makes himself better company. Especially late in Stage 6 when you need very precise jumping. I know that I am in the minority here, and a lot would say that JJ and Jeff has old and tired gameplay, but you know what? I don't care. I love it. JJ and Jeff is not a perfect platformer. The level designs are interesting but not earth-shattering. There are a lot of enemies, but many are repeated. However, there is so much hidden stuff to find, and the game has a real addictive feel to it as you get faster and faster in completing the levels. If you're a 2D platforming fan, I'd say give it a shot and just have fun. JJ and Jeff, 3.5 turbo chips out of 5 for old school platforming goodness.